Hey guys, wanted to go ahead and talk about a really controversial topic here and to go from there. But for anybody who might be interested, it might be helpful and to go from there. So the topics I wanted to talk about was investing and personal finance. And what I think are personally some of the most valuable books I've read and I'm not going to go over all these books. There's a lot of these that are they kind of say the same thing and really are just regurgitations of each other. And then some that I don't actually think are valuable. But I will break it down in as much as I can to explain about some of these books and to go from there. Okay, so first thing I want to say is that some of the concepts I'm going to talk about are very contrary. They're not going to be in line with what you read on YouTube.
The Little Book About Investing by John C. Bogle. And one of my favorite things about this book, guys, honestly, is all the drama and shade that John C. Bogle throws to all those mutual funds and all that extra stuff that charge you a ton of money on fees. Because basically, if you don't know who John C. Bogle is...
on that YouTube channel right there on the left, they just talked about, they say that this book is that they recommend this book, The Little Book of Common Sense, Investing by John C. Bogle. And what I want to say is I disagree. Actually, I would just toss this book to the side if I were you. And let me save you 4 hours of your time, okay? And explain what that book says in 2 sentences, okay? That book says, you suck at investing. You'll never be good at investing. Don't bother. Just buy Vanguard. There. I just saved you 3 or 4 hours of your time. And that's not even an exaggeration. That is actually exactly what that book says. Is there truth to what he's saying? Yes. But I want to present a few other books that I think do a better job of what that book is trying to do in a different way. The other book that I want to kind of mention here, and I'm just going to put my camera down here. Sorry about this, guys. I know this is infuriating because I can't. I need a video editor of some sort. But anyway, I'll just put this down here. Another common book which is recommended is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. And I actually would agree with this book. However, what I don't like about this book is that it's an extremely dry book to read. So by no means is this a first book that I would recommend for investors. But let me try to explain kind of my takeaways from the book and try to explain it as fast as I can. So I'll just put a little thing here. So he kind of follows basically his strategy is it's all about the long game, not the short game, buying and selling, right? So think about it this way. If you had an account, right, and you couldn't touch it for 10 years, we're just going to say this, right? What would you buy, right? The truth of the matter is it doesn't matter what you buy or what I buy or what you think it. What matters is those are the stocks that you believe in, right? So for me, personally, I would buy Google, Disney, Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with these stocks, but these are the stocks. Well, I also like Visa and I like Target because of things that are actually going on with the market, and I believe in these particular stocks. And what he's basically saying is kind of what Warren Buffett goes along with is if you don't believe in the stock for 10 years, you shouldn't even consider that stock for like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Like he's all about the long game. The other thing he believes in is the concept of a low price per earning ratio. So to someone who doesn't understand stocks, let me explain it this way. So you can have a stock that's like, say, we'll pick like Twitter, okay? And Twitter keeps going up and down. Like, I don't know where. We'll just say Twitter's at about $65 a share, okay? And you've got Berkshire, which is $300,000 per share. Actually, let's pick something like Tesla. Tesla would be a better example. So let's say Tesla is around, I think, they're like 270 something a share. Does that mean that Berkshire share, because it's $300,000 a share, is this more expensive than this stock up top? And no, it's not. You can't just look at the stock price. A stock could be $20 per share, right? And could be more expensive than a $1,000 per share stock. And the reason why, it's the price per earning ratio. And so to explain this, think of it this way, right? So we'll just look at 2 pizzas. Okay. So this pizza is cut into little tiny slices. And this, you're only getting 4 slices, right? Let's say this pizza was originally $500. This is just a fucking analogy. And this pizza was, let's say, we'll just say $500. We'll just say this one was $300. Sorry, $400. So if you're paying $100 for this slice of pizza, and you're paying this amount for that, like, are you actually getting? Is this actually cheaper than this? Right. So, where does this correlate? Well, okay. Sorry if I'm confusing anybody. I kind of want to break it down. This guy here, the intelligent investor, he wouldn't buy Amazon. He wouldn't buy Tesla. He wouldn't buy anything in tech because it's an expensive stock per share. So, but the thing is, if you follow this book to the T, especially in this day and age, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of stocks and companies that are out there, and sometimes it makes sense to buy them, even though they are expensive. And he would never do that. This entire book is all about, like, you would never do that. Like, you're just, he doesn't believe in the notion of buying companies like that because, like, what he would buy stocks that are kind of like low price per earning ratio. But the problem is that this day and age, I'm talking 2020, you're talking stocks that kind of flatline. Something like Intel. Like, yeah, great, that gives you a nice dividend. Or let's say you buy something like Gilead, although Gilead actually is something you want to keep an eye on. That's like, basically stocks that just kind of taper off, and they don't really move up or down, and they don't really give you what you want. And that's just not really going to do much for you if you want to, like, actually build wealth. And but the main takeaway from The Intelligent Investor, and why I definitely would recommend it, is because he talks about the notion of everything you buy is a company. Don't just buy anything willy-nilly. So he doesn't believe, like, what I agree with him is, and his whole section on this is the notion of speculative stocks, right? So you wouldn't buy, like, I don't bother penny stocks. Forget that, man. I don't bother with, like, weed stocks, and I don't bother with crypto because in my mind, that's not something I understand and know, and it's not something I would believe in for the long haul. But I believe in his notion of, like, hey, you want to buy companies that you believe in, right? So, it's kind of like what Warren Buffett always says. If, think of it like this. If an idiot took over that company has got to be able to do well because an idiot is going to take over that company. And it's true. However, going with what I was saying earlier, I don't think this is a great first book to read. I think it's a great book to read later on. But a great first book to read, I actually would recommend this book instead, which is called The Lazy Person's Guide to Investing, and it's written by Paul B. Farrell. And I recommend this book because of many reasons. The first reason why is it's extremely easy to understand. Like, anybody can pick up the book. You don't need to really understand too much about investing to know what he's talking about, and it's perfectly valid. It says right here, a book for procrastinators, the financially challenged, and everyone who worries about dealing with their money. So I recommend anybody who's interested in investing to check out this book. The second reason is it works. So basically, if you look at the formulas, it's very, very, like, not exciting, but they work. And he kind of follows Warren Buffett's principles in the sense that, like, so Warren Buffett made a bet with, like, all the hedge managers out there. And he said, you know what? You can do all your fancy shit. I'm just going to buy the S&P 500 and we'll check back in 10 years. And I guarantee you I'm going to win. And he did. He beat everybody, and all he did was just put money in the S&P 500. And basically, that's kind of what this book is all about. But the third reason, and the most important reason why I think this book is extremely important out of, in my opinion, many of these other books, is because it gives you the courage to start. I think the most difficult part of investing isn't so much about day trading or swing trading, and I'll go over books about that I think are really valuable regarding that topic. But this book actually gets you to start, and that's, in my opinion, the most important step in investing is starting. Like, don't ever be like those people that are just like, oh, I don't know it, it's intimidating, or maybe it's not a good time to buy right now. Like, that is the worst. You want to start. Just start with something. Start with something you're willing to lose, but you got to start with something, otherwise you'll never learn, right? So definitely would recommend this book, and I'm trying to go over everything as fast as I can to go over some of the concepts here. So I'm going to move these books to the side and talk about another book. And you're gonna hear about it. It's Dave Ramsey's A Total Money Makeover. People have mentioned it. However, I'm going to mention two other books which are identical to this book in many ways. I want to talk about The Millionaire Next Door, and then I also want to talk about Your Money or Your Life. My philosophy, you can get any of these three books. They all pretty much say the same thing. And what they're saying is that at the end of the day, frugality wins the game. You know, if you look at, so this guy right here, he made a study on like millionaires throughout the U.S. And what he found out is that a lot of millionaires, they're not driving fancy cars. They're not buying the brand new cars. They're not, they're not buying the brand new shit all the time. And what he found is like a lot of people who are actually really, truly wealthy, they're actually pretty frugal. Like they actually will buy a used car that's like 3 years older. They're smart with their money. They invest their money. It's not like in TV when you see like all these celebrities on TV that buy like fancy cars and buy like all this clothes. They're buying shit that like goes down in value the moment you like drive it off the lot, right? And that's kind of what Dave Ramsey says too. I have no affiliation with this guy, but I definitely recommend checking out his YouTube channel. Just watch like 5 videos and you're going to understand what he's saying. And, his mantra is you live like no one else so that you can live like no one else. But what he basically talks about is like, it's stupid to buy a brand new car. It's stupid to buy a lease. You're actually losing a lot of money. I mean, okay, let's just think about it this way, right? So this is a really bad analogy, but I'm trying to break it down so you really understand the picture, okay? So we'll just say, okay, some guy's going out there trying to he buys a BMW, right? So we'll just buy, BMW. And he's trying to show off like, hey, I've got this cool looking car, blah, blah, blah. We'll just say like $60,000 or, give or take. And then you got to tack on insurance on that. At the end of the day, like if you buy this brand new, you drive it off the lot, you just essentially lost like 20% of the value on there. Think about it this way. If you bought a stock for like, okay, let me just simplify the math so it's simpler. I'll just say 100,000, okay? Would you buy, let's say you had a stock that was $100,000. Would you buy that stock if you knew it was going to drop 20% in 1 year? So it would now be worth $80,000. And then you knew that in about 3 or 4 years, that stock would be worth half that. So down to 40,000. And then 2 more years, and that maybe 3 more years, and that would be only worth $5,000. Buying a brand new car is extremely stupid. It's like it's one of the easiest ways to go broke. Is kind of what he's saying, and I agree with that. Or in notion with that, even worse are buying leases. You buy a lease on a car, you put down all this money on it, and at the end, after 3 years, you don't have a car. It's like that's the easiest way to lose your money. And people will say, well, like, but I need a car. I need to go from you don't. Yes, you need a car, but you don't need a fucking fancy car. You don't need a brand new car. You are just buying that because you want to put up a particular image. But what he's saying is, if you bought a car that was like 3 years used, people aren't going to know the difference. I mean, but at the end of the day, that's the difference between losing like $20,000 or $30,000 versus like saving a lot of money. And so, in a nutshell, that's what these 3 books talk about, is the importance of being frugal and being smart with your money, not trying to impress people who honestly don't give a fuck who you are, right? It's kind of what these books are actually talking about. And in my opinion, these 3 books are the same. So you can choose one or the other, or in honestly, I know this sounds a little bit far-fetched, but you actually don't need to read these 3 books. Just watch Dave Ramsey's YouTube channel, like watch all of them. And like, it'll take you about 3 days to go through it. And that will summarize pretty much everything in these 3 books. So want to kind of lay that down and put that on the side. The other book I wanted to mention here is this book here, which I think, in my opinion, is an extremely, I found this book to be the most influential out of actually all the books I've read, which is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, before I go on about this book, I will tell you right off the bat that this book here, which says, why didn't they teach me in this school? You can just toss this book to the side because this is pretty much saying the same thing. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what I do want to say about this particular book, it's not going to teach you anything directly on like what to invest in. It's not going to teach you directly on like what sorts of real estate things. It's a really thin ass book when you really think about it. What this book does, at least for me, and the value I derive from it, is that it actually it opens your eyes. Like, it totally changes your view on the world. What he says, and it's true, when you're in school, like, you're going to learn about like math and science and English and physics or geology or Spanish or whatever the hell topics you've learned in school. But school doesn't actually teach you money. Like, you don't learn money from school. Like, what's a market order? What's a limit order? When do you sell a stock? When do you buy a stock? How do you deal with taxes? How do I file my own taxes? What can you teach me about taxes? What about real estate? Can you teach me about that? Can you, what about like, what are some of the careers I should get in terms of like what will help me out financially in the future? Like all sorts of questions about money. How do I even deal with stocks? Can you teach me about stocks? How do I even deal about investing? You're not going to learn any of this shit from school. You actually, and what he's saying is this, and it's aptly named Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on the situation, you're going to learn money habits from your parents, not from school. So if your parents were poor or your parents were rich, it's not just because they're rich or poor that, it's also the habits that you learn from your parents. So, okay, so I'm going to go over a really bad analogy, but this kind of actually goes in line of what I was talking about earlier, which is the Millionaire Next Door and frugality. So I used to work in a rental car company when I was it was one of my first jobs. And what I found shocking was I would go in my job, I'd actually have to drive over there to pick them up. And you would think that the really, really rich people would buy, like, when they rent a car, that they would get like the Mercedes-Benz or they would get like the Lexus or the fancy ass cars. But no, they were always like, I want to get the economy car, the cheapest car you guys have in the lot. Versus, you would see other families and, they were kind of like in the, I would say the poor areas of the town. And they're like, hey, I want to get that Mercedes-Benz, because I'm like, YOLO, and, it's kind of like, where was I going with this? Oh, right. So the biggest takeaway I got from this book and why I think it's extremely important is that you actually don't learn about money from school and you learn it from your parents. So if your parents are rich or wealthy or poor, you learn those bad habits. But the thing is, and the biggest takeaway I got from this book was I learned after reading this book, and this is why this book actually was a big eye-opener for me. It was like, I didn't learn this in school. How do I learn it? Where do I need to go? So in my mind, I'm like, I need to learn about investing. I need to learn about taxes. I need to learn about credit card debt. I need to know about this. I need to know about these things because I wasn't taught this in school. And so this was the book that actually kind of spurred me to learn about investing as a whole. So I definitely would recommend this overall. It's a great book. The last book I want to talk about is kind of a little bit contrary to the other concepts, but I think it's a great book because people are going to ask about it. Everyone knows about okay, so before I go on further, I want to say something that's extremely important. Don't ever buy, I'm serious, do not ever buy any sort of YouTube classes or programs that say, hey, we're going to teach you how to buy and trade and do stock trades. Give us money. Those are all scams. They are all scams. Don't ever bother with those. You don't need to buy those. Instead, just get this book here. Stan Weinstein's Secret for Profiting in Bull and Bear Markets. This, in my opinion, is the best book. It is, in my opinion, the Bible of learning a lot about, I would say, short-term trading, buying and selling, swing trading, right? So let me kind of break it down here in a really simple way, or as best as I can. And go over a few principles that are kind of important. The first thing I want to talk about is, so a lot of investors will say, hey, investing's better than, the long haul is better than buying and selling and buying and selling. And there's some truth to that. And what they're saying is because you get the big three. Number one, you don't get dinged on taxes. Because, if you keep buying and selling, you get dinged on taxes. The second thing is you get compound interest. Money keeps going up. Compound interest is huge. And I'll talk about that. The third thing is dividends. If you have dividends, you're getting free money. But you would never experience any of these three experiences if you're constantly being a day trader, buying and selling. Now, just for the point of reference, I'm going to talk about compound interest. So there's something called the rule of 72. It's just a simple rule to understand, but it's actually really important. What this says is this. You take 72 divided by the percentage that your stock is going up. And that will tell you how long it will take for you to double your money, right? So let's look at most tech stocks these years. It's basically going at about 20%, right? So give or take, you're actually going to double your money in about 3 to 4 years. But let's say in a conservative way, in the S&P 500, typically most stocks, I would say they go about 12.5%, right? So 72 divided by 12.5%, give or take, we'll just say divided by 12.5, sorry, not 12.5. So it's going to take you, give or take, 6 years for you to double your money. So whatever money you put in the market, it'll take you 6 years. Let me tell you something. What happens if you put money in a bank and let it sit in a bank, right? 72 divided by, a bank gives you about 1%. It will take you 72 years for you to double your money in a bank. And that's not even factoring inflation. Inflation is about 2%, and that's eating away your money. That's why you should never, ever just let your money sit in a bank. You need to invest that money, right? So going on topic, there is, as I was mentioning before, the long-term game, which is you just set it and forget it. And honestly, that actually is one of the best ways to deal with stocks, in my opinion. However, and why I feel Stan Weinstein's book of Secrets for Profiting in Bull and Bear Markets is extremely valuable. He actually breaks it down on like the short-term game, right? So some stocks, they are so volatile, they go up and down, that it doesn't make sense to hold them for the long haul. These are stocks, I would say, these are fling stocks. You're not married to these stocks. You're just buying them for the sake of buying them and selling them when you feel like it's time, right? So, and there's always a bunch of these every year. So 3 or 4 years ago, it was GoPro, GPRO, GoPro. This was a stock, if you bought it on a red day and you sold on a green day, red day, sold, you made fucking money, right? Let's go rewind to last year. It was a stock called Beyond Meat, an IPO. They make basically the plant-based sort. That stock, if you bought and sold it, you would have made a lot of money. This year, what is it? I think there's a few companies I think actually fit for this year. Definitely Zoom, right? Because of the whole COVID issue. But do I believe in Zoom for the next 10 years? No. Do I believe in Zoom for the next 3 years? No. I only believe in Zoom for this year, or maybe up until June of 2021, and I'm fucking bailing out of that stock afterwards. I wouldn't put Zoom in the same class of Google or or Microsoft or Disney. It's not a long-term stock, right? So that's kind of what you do. Is like there's some stocks you're not married to that stock. So let me go over one really important principle regarding stocks that will save you a lot of money and a lot of grief and a lot of time regarding stocks. So, okay, sorry about that. My video just kind of cut out there for a second there. So let me kind of go over a rule I think it's really important and to go from there. Sorry about that. When it comes to stocks, few rules. First is only put in what you're willing to lose. It's kind of like, I would say in general, only put in what you're willing to lose. So think of it kind of like, how people, they go to Vegas and they're like, you know what? Just like, just only put in what you're willing to lose is what I would say. On the second note, what I want to say is this: don't do paper trading I would say. So there's these simulators where basically you don't actually put in any real money. You're not putting real money. You're just kind of doing simulations and you're buying stocks. Don't do that because it develops really terrible habits. And there's a different way of when the money isn't real, then you don't trade it like it's real. And so what I'd say is put in real money, but what you're willing to lose. Going in line with this, the other thing I would say is extremely important is always start small. Just always start small, because if the stock should drop, then you have options. It's like, oh shit, like, okay, you know what? I'm going to sell. I'm out of here. Or, you know what? I'm going to hold. Or, hey, you know what? I got a good feeling about this stock. I'm going to double down. I think it's at a discount right now. But you have an option because you bought small. However, if you buy big, right, then you're into big trouble, because basically when the stock drops, and you sell that stock, you lost all of that money. But then if you double down, that's extremely dangerous, because what if you lose even more? And then if you hold, well, you're not going to be able to sleep at night, which is why in general, I always say you really should always start small. It's extremely important. And as I was saying before, don't buy classes or programs that say like, oh, you know what, like, you know, we're going to teach you about how to, you know, buy and trade and just give us like 200. Those are scams, man. Like, trust me, don't spend your money on that. I'm telling you right now, like, this book, Stan Weinstein's Secrets for Profiting in Bull and Bear Markets, is all that you need to read. And what's really cool about it, I mean, he gives you quizzes, man. He goes, stocks XYZ is excellent, you know, and he goes, do you do A, B, C, or D, right? He like breaks it down where you understand, and he also explains it as to why. Check this out. Number 6, you look at XYZ. At what point in the stock is stock XYZ the safest to buy? A, B, C, or D. Now, the truth of the matter is you don't really know sometimes. You know what I mean? But he breaks it down. He goes over, and it's in a very like quick reference guide on buying. Okay, before going further, here's a handy checklist, you know, and he goes over all these points. And this book is, in my opinion, what helped me the most for doing day trades and swing tradings. And as I was kind of mentioning earlier before, some stocks you're just not going to be married to it. You know, that's okay. Some stocks, you're not going to be in it for the long haul. And some stocks you are. Some stocks you're married to. Some stocks are it's just a one night stand, right? So for me, you know, like as I was saying, for me, like Amazon is like forever. Like you buy that shit and come back, Amazon ain't going anywhere. They're forever. But something like GoPro like 3 or 4 years ago, I was right. It's fucking tanked. You know, like that's kind of like another concept I want to talk about too, which is kind of unrelated but important too. Don't get so hung up on the long term sometimes, where like I see sometimes where people are so worried about like I would say taxes, and they're like, oh, I don't want to get dinged. Sometimes it's dangerous to hold on to stock too long. You know, that's kind of a counterpoint of what I was saying to holding on the long term. Sometimes imagine if you bought Twitter and you held on to it, your stock would just drop down and you would just be like, you would be losing in that stock. So you always got to, you know, as I was saying, some stocks are worth buying and holding for the long term. And that's why I always strongly encourage having 2 accounts. Okay. So one account is you buy stocks that you believe in and you never touch it. You just never touch that account. And the second one is more for like buying and selling. So I'll be honest, there are stocks that I day trade and there's stocks that I swing trade, and there's stocks that, you know, I like, okay, so let me give you an example. Okay. So I think Palantir right now, that's a stock that I'm keeping an eye on because it goes up and down, up and down. It goes red one day, it goes green one day. Red, green, red, green. You buy and you double down, you're going to make a good amount of money on Palantir right now. It's just kind of like it's so volatile right now because it's an IPO. Some stocks are kind of like that, but some stocks, they move up big on something called earnings reports. And so sometimes that's a gamble too, but sometimes I'll buy, you know, just for the hell of it, just to see what happens and see what happens. It's a swing trade. And if it doesn't pan out, like I said, I didn't put that much money into it. But if it does pan out, then I'm like, holy shit, got some more money, right? Versus, as I was kind of saying, I wouldn't do that with Disney. Like right now, Disney is in a lot of, you know, kind of like a little bit of a funk. But dude, you know what? Disney's going to be forever. You think kids are suddenly not going to do Disney? Like, you know, they're going to be around 10 years from now. And if you buy right now, it's going to be something that's going to pan out. Another thing I'm kind of like, that's kind of what I'm saying. So I hope this was helpful for anybody this might be interested in, and we'll go from there. All right, bye guys.